What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Rec Nation. Guys, as promised, we are getting to some SABATON history. Good friend of the channel, Nightkiss, suggested 4 videos, and they kind of sort of parallel at least the beginning of the World at War documentary. And it's interesting because SABATON, if you guys aren't familiar with SABATON, they're like a metal group that's content is singing about history. Historical either battles, historical figures, and they do such a great job of bringing history in music form to the masses. And they are one of my top 5 bands I've ever checked out on Areas in the Nation. So I just reacted to Rise of Evil over on Areas in the Nation. You'll probably see that video pop up right here. You know, which is crazy because I'm linking all these different channels together. I'm trying to bring everyone on board, trying to raise awareness for our journey on Rumble through the World at War documentary, because I will do whatever it takes to bring as many people to eat at that table to ingest that documentary again, especially with me going through it for the first time. So I think more people need to get on this ride. And this kind of plays into the beginning of the documentary. It's Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, the rise of evil. So this is hovering around, I would say, at least the song is heavily based on like episode 1 of World at War. Kind of like the temperature, the climate in after World War I in Germany. Maybe the rise, Adolf Hitler's rise to power. So this is going to be interesting, guys. Listen, I'm trying to cross promote these platforms here. I know you came here just for this, or if you're just checking it out. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we're talking about this stuff. And yes, let's just dive into it. Indy Nidell is a phenomenal historical orator. Is that what you would say? Orator. Someone who tells history. Historical orator? I don't know. I'm trying to be smart. I'm not smart, guys. Anyway, it's not about me. Let's bring up the subject matter. Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. I'm about to hit stop recording. 3, 2, 1. Let's go, guys.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Joachim from SABATON.
And this is SABATON History. Adolf Hitler's rise to power was as unlikely as his rule was catastrophic.
And our song Rise of Evil is quite unusual in the sense that it doesn't cover an armed conflict.
And he's going to tell you about the song, but first, I'm going to tell you the history. Now we're just getting started. We have the power, and we're not going to give it up again. With these prescient words, Adolf Hitler greeted his party members on February 5th, 1933, a few days after he was officially declared the new chancellor of Germany. The National Socialists, his party, known also as the NSDAP, or the Nazi Party, is now the biggest party in the Reichstag, the parliament, with 33% of the seats. Now, the Communist Party has 16.9%. That means that the conservative center-right and liberal center-left parties, opposed to both the communists and the Nazis, as well as each other, don't have the majority needed to form a government. Instead, under leadership of a conservative and Catholic bloc, many of the mainstream MPs plan to simply control the ambitious Hitler when he is chancellor. But Hitler was determined. His goal was to get nothing less than absolute power. He would destroy the parliamentary system, which he very much despised, and establish his Führerdiktatur by any and all means necessary. But to rise above the others, Hitler had to win over the general public, large private interests, and the powerful elements of the government and the military first. His first speech as the Chancellor of the Reich was a roundup of the topics he had unceasingly spoken about since the beginning of his political career in the pubs of Munich after the First World War. But Hitler had perfected the art of public speaking, and he really knew how to work a crowd and how to paint pictures in the minds of his listeners. He spoke of the years of Marxist influence that had ruined the German economy, how the Treaty of Versailles, dictated by the malevolent victors of the war, had left the once glorious German Empire fragmented and its people impoverished. And as the listeners grew emotional, Hitler promised that he would destroy Marxism with fire and sword and free Germany from the poisonous class struggle.
Wow.
Under his leadership, German society would find its way back to conservative Christian values and find renewed pride in its past. This turned non-Nazi tacit acceptance of Hitler into actual sympathy, especially from the right end of the political spectrum. However, while Hitler spoke of peace and prosperity to the public, he shifted to a bellicose, threatening, and more sinister tone in more private conversations. Just a few days after becoming chancellor, he met with the highest generals of the Reichswehr, Germany's handicapped army. Germany's future, Hitler insisted, is depending on the Wehrmacht and the Wehrmacht alone. Pacifism was unworthy of Germany's heritage, and according to Hitler's social Darwinistic views, Germany had to fight its way back to great power status. Getting back lost colonies was one idea, but conquering Lebensraum in Europe's east and pursuing a ruthless Germanization was preferable to Hitler and the Nazis.
Wow.
Either way, to be in a position to make demands of the world, Germany's military had to undergo a massive buildup, despite the limitations imposed by the Versailles Treaty. This was exactly what those generals most wanted to hear. A strong military would consequently elevate their own positions in German society.
A nation in despair, weakened by war, defeated, lost of pride in the sight. A former prisoner with a vision or delusion, rise to power in the Reich.
As a next step, Hitler met with another powerful group, the industrials. Many shareholders of the big companies, such as IG Farben or Krupp, were initially distrustful of Hitler and his party, especially the word socialist in National Socialist Party. That had a lot of them worried that radical economic changes that would negatively affect them were on the horizon. Today, in 2019, there is still a debate among historians as to how socialists, the National Socialists, actually were. In terms of social policy, they were on the extreme reactionary right. Opinions vary as to their economic policy, and they likely always will. But one thing was pretty certain about the party back then. The NSDAP was broke. Election campaigns are expensive, and the lavish style of the Nazis with all the uniforms, banners, and parades was a real drain on funds. Hitler convinced the industrials, though, that socialist was a rather flexible term and that their powerful position would go untouched under his rule. Instead, there would be a lot of new contracts for them from the armament industry. Again, Hitler's speaking skills transformed suspicious listeners to excited followers. And by the end of the meeting, the NSDAP coffers were filled with 3 million Reichsmarks. You got to spend money to make money, right?
Wow, man.
Now with
it's draw parallels as much as you want, guys, you know. But this, man, it's like the people wanted to hear something and the business owners wanted to hear something. You know, two were vastly different. One wanted hope, the other wanted money. And he said yes. He I feel like he said what he had to say to get everyone on his side, and that's what he ended up doing, getting everyone on his side. And bro, do you see that? Like those what would they be called? Those public speaking like events? Nuts. I like insane amounts of people. Like there was one shot over on over in the World at War documentary where it's just an ocean of people. I'm like, goodness gracious. It's insane. It's insane what was accomplished in such a short time, in spite of such I would say it, and I'm not trying to like mince words. I want to try to choose my words carefully, but what was then a defeated Germany, and yeah, this is crazy. He went from 0 to 60 very quick.
with the support of both the military and industry.
Let me take it back some.
NSDAP coffers were filled with 3 million Reichsmarks. You got to spend money to make money, right? Now, with the support of both the military and industry, Hitler turned to his internal enemies. He made fellow Nazi Hermann Goering famous World War I fighter pilot, and in 1933, president of the Reichstag and minister without portfolio, Reichskommissar of the Prussian Department of the Interior, and minister-president of Prussia, which meant nothing less than that Goering now commanded both the police and the administration of the Prussian state. And he immediately purged both institutions of enemies of the Nazis and formed the Gestapo, the secret police. The Nazi paramilitary organizations SS, SA, and Stahlhelm now ran rampant, targeting their enemies and settling scores both old and new. Their victims were mostly communists and social democrats at this point. But other critics of the Nazis fell prey to the violent mob or to corrupt police officers. They busted up election meetings. They jumped and arrested people on the streets or dragged them out of their homes at night. In the brown barracks, the enemies of the Nazis were brutally beaten, tortured, and often outright killed without consequence for the murderers. It was a brutal terror that swept the Prussian state, but was in fact only an omen of what was to come for the rest of the country once the Nazis got control of the entire government system. Officially, this was explained by Hitler as preventing the imminent communist revolution. That actually was believed by large parts of the public because the danger of the communist threat, the Red Scare, had been hyped by politicians across the spectrum since World War I. The Reichstag fire, the burning of the German parliament building on February 27th, was just another catalyst to further escalate the violence. To this day, there are those who believe that the Nazis were actually behind the attack on the Reichstag, although there is no direct evidence of this. And in his diaries, Joseph Goebbels, Nazi propagandist, and in February 1933, soon-to-be Minister of Propaganda, gives no hints about it. But the lone Dutch communist was captured at the scene, gave Hitler the chance to push the first of many emergency laws through Parliament. As a response to the attack, the basic rights of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of the press were immediately suspended, as was the power of the individual German states.
Rebuilding on our
Damn.
way. Make the nation proud. Disregarding the treaty. Secret plans for Lebensraum. Stop the Holocaust. The Reich will rise.
The terror now swept nationwide as the Gleichschaltung, the co-option of the interior ministries under Nazi rule, took effect under these emergency laws. Bit by bit, the positions in the governments of German cities and states were taken over by Nazi Party members. All police and security forces were by mid-1934 under direct control of the SS, Schutzstaffel, and its leader, Heinrich Himmler. Himmler appoints Theodor Eicke to head up the Dachau camp, and Eicke proceeds to formalize what had been a spontaneously created concentration camp system. An atmosphere of violence and fear gripped every German city in those days, and everyone knew that people could simply disappear and find themselves in the laboratory of violence. That's what the German historian Volker Ulrich called Dachau in those days.
Wow, the laboratory
Among
of
those
violence.
people who disappeared were Jews, the main villains in Hitler's worldview. Now, the takeover by Hitler triggered some rather negative reactions abroad. So the Nazis claim, with no evidence, that this is because Jews are spreading false stories of atrocities committed in Germany. In retaliation for the fictional crimes, on April 1st, 1933, the Nazis called for a nationwide boycott of Jewish stores, doctors, and lawyers. Although the boycott gains little traction and only really lasts for a day, Jews were now the official enemy of the state, and the legal discrimination against Jews was soon followed by physical violence. This was very unpopular with large parts of the general public, but there was no substantial resistance among the people either. Just apathy. The terror had already done its work, and the people were terrified. And the violence and discrimination against the Jews would only increase year by year until the pogroms of Kristallnacht of 1938, when Jews were killed or sent to camps by the thousands, their synagogues burned, their homes, prayer rooms, and graveyards destroyed. Beginning November 1938, they are incarcerated simply for being Jews. Back again in 1933, on May 1st, the National Socialist Party celebrated the Tag der Arbeit, Labor Day, as an official holiday with huge parades and tens of thousands of workers listening to Hitler's speeches on the radio. Hitler had promised to reduce the high unemployment rate by gigantic construction projects like the Autobahn. Fairly short-term solution, sure, but the idea worked, and the traditional left-leaning workers put their trust in Hitler. The next day, the last real threat to Nazi rule that could have united large parts of society, the unions, accepted their dissolution without a fight.
Wow.
Instead, the NSDAP had gained over 2 million members in just those 3 months of 1933 alone. And the Nazis had successfully destroyed any opposition to their rule. Everyone who thought Hitler controllable, everyone who thought the Nazis would never gain real power, and everyone who had hesitated to organize a coordinated resistance to the violence was now rendered powerless. The Nazis had taken control over every vital institution in Germany, and they were not about to give up that power. The swastika flew next to the national colors and would soon replace them as the flag of the German Reich. From the very beginning, Hitler had not only been determined to obtain absolute power, but he had also been completely open about his plans. His ambitions, declared in his book Mein Kampf, were by no means a secret, but nearly everybody had underestimated the ruthlessness of the former corporal from Austria. One party, one belief, one conviction, as Goebbels dictated. All other parties must be eradicated, and only the Nazi Party shall remain.
Dude. Oh my God, bro.
With Germany under his control, Hitler moved on to the next phase of his grand vision. His gaze wandered outwards, across the borders drawn in 1919. The Fuhrer looked towards Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Lithuania, to the countries that he saw as bearing the stigma of the Versailles Treaty, nations where a large ethnic German population lived under what Hitler considered foreign rule. Reversing or breaking that treaty was the next step in Hitler's plans, but that would take time to prepare. And until then, Hitler had to rely on bait-and-switch tactics. Dishonesty was his weapon of choice, to test the weakness and the gullibility of the other European powers. While the Wehrmacht was preparing and rebuilding under the swastika, the Fuhrer's plans for the expansion of the Third Reich were set in motion. Hitler was growing ready to wager Germany's future in an all-or-nothing gamble. There would be no 1918 ever again. Germany would return to glory, or it would perish.
Man, and you know what? It's like I found out through the documentary that we're watching, his army went from a minuscule amount to like 7 times that in a very short amount of time. And his his forces just the size of his force went from insignificant to, yeah, this is terrifying now. And it's interesting to see how the other nations were acting during that time. Looking from the outside in, and just like hindsight, it's tough. It's tough to see this through the lens of that time. Because, obviously hindsight's 2020. You could easily be like, well, what the hell were everyone else thinking? And that's a couple of comments I made in those videos. It's like, what was everyone else doing? Like, well, they had just come out of a terrible war. The last thing anyone wanted there was another war. So this to me is just insane to see this development from where it started to where it ended up going, because it's so easy to be like, oh, that's just ridiculous, like you can't look through it. You can't look at this moment with hindsight. You have to look at it at the time, current time. This must have been absolutely nuts, and you could never trust what the hell was being said, because just like Indy just said, he's the master of lies. Master of lies. He knows exactly what to say, when to say it, and it's terrifying.
Rise of Evil, just by the nature of its subject matter, is
it's got to be a little bit controversial, right? I mean, has that ever come to haunt you?
Not really haunt us, but it is a controversial subject. It's about how Adolf Hitler came to power. And let's just say the promoters in especially Germany weren't really looking forward to us performing that song live. However, I mean, as soon as we explained to them that, you know, we are a band that sings about military history, controversial subjects will arise from time to time. However, we don't ever do any kind of political or religious propaganda.
Yeah.
And this song is simply about how Adolf Hitler came to power.
That's it. That's it. This is what I hate. This is what he just touched on it. It's history. It's history. They're just singing about how it happened. They're not. Oh man, there's some people out there that just can't. They can't look at something without rushing to their keyboards before they grasp the whole concept of what's happening, and it baffles me, because it's just like, listen to the look at the song, look at what they're singing about, and understand where this band is coming from, which is they speak on military history. And if anything, even though they sing about, they write songs about war and battle and historic figures, they're not glorifying war. They're making it, they're bringing war in front of your face. Like, let's not do this shit again. This is nuts. This is true atrocities that humans are capable of, and bringing it to you. Like, don't forget this. You know, and I feel like this is the fact that there was any backlash. I mean, okay, I get Germany. You know, I get that. Over on Embrace the Globe 21, we check out some German videos from Feli from Germany. And she has brought to light a bunch of different things, a bunch of different nuances, like how World War II, how German history is taught in schools. It was pretty interesting. But, yeah, this thing happened in time, guys. Understand that. I mean, I know you guys are watching. I'm just saying for the masses. For the masses, there are a lot of people out there that just don't pay this kind of subject, this topic, any mind. And it's mind-blowing, because this is one of the things we should all know. We should all be on the same page here. Like, yeah, that shit was nuts. It was terrible. Let's not repeat it. That's the importance of learning history. So, yeah.
Well, it's not pro-Nazi. It's telling a story.
Absolutely. And we can't really tell a story about World War II without somehow including Adolf Hitler or the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably have to mention them once in a while.
Yeah, you have to mention the war.
No, but you have a lot of fans all over the world, and they're going to be of all different nations and all different backgrounds and all different political figures. You must have extremists from all kinds of stripes, including you must have some fans around there that are pro-Nazi. That's going to happen just by the number of fans you have.
Yeah, I mean, we've been accused of being almost everything because we cover so many subjects for so many different points of view. Actually, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't actually give a shit what people who listen to us think.
Right.
I don't give a shit about
Yes.
the religion, the color of their skin, or anything. Everything is fine. But please, you know, consider it like genitals. It's okay to have, but don't whip them out in public.
Okay.
So
You hear that, Tommy?
So it's like all we care about is we don't want our music in any way used for political or religious reasons. We don't want to compromise on our neutrality. We want to be able to tell stories from all kinds of views, not by judging what's wrong or right, but simply because we find that way of telling the story the most interesting one. But we do know we're walking into minefields sometimes.
Sure.
That's a good example also with doing the whole Carolus Rex album, doing it in Swedish as well, because in many ways that is considered extreme right-wing in Sweden. We've been called communists as well because of doing the Songatero Dominatus about the final battle of Berlin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can keep accusing us of our
I love
political
this
views,
dude.
but the
He's
simple
awesome,
fact
man.
is we don't really have any message with our music other than to tell these stories.
I think that was very well said. Well, that is it for today from Sabaton History.
All right, everyone. Remember to support us on Patreon. Check out the other videos we got. They're good. And also, don't forget Time Ghost, and World War II.
Guys,
Take care, everyone.
listen. If you don't know, if you're unfamiliar with what Sabaton is doing, they are I vouch for Sabaton. They're an amazing band, doing amazing things. Very unique, very important. Yeah, and that's my issue. If I can get on a little tiny little soapbox here, we need to talk about history. Why can't we just talk about history? You know, people get squeamish about certain words like Nazis. Like they fucking existed. They exist. Like what the fuck is wrong with it? It's very annoying that it's like, okay, let's talk about everything else and then let's anyway. I feel like this topic is well, highly discussed, to put it very mildly. But it's very important. It's very important to maintain open discourse about these things. You know, it's when you get sides that come already militant. That's where it blows my mind, guys. You know, like history should be taught regardless of what it is, the good and the bad. It's more important to teach about the bad. You know, and I feel like we tend, at least nowadays in this weird time that we're living in, it's a lot of stuff is softened down, is edited, is like sugar coated. And that's not real life. That's not how it is out there. That's not how it should be taught. You know, no punches should be held when talking about history. It's very important to keep that pure 100%. Whether you can palate it or not, that's up for you. That's up to you. But it should be taught. And I'm finding this out over on the Rumble journey with World at War. It's like, dude, I didn't know any of this stuff. Whether that's a lack of me paying attention or I just wasn't taught about it. Because I'm learning over there on that documentary. Anyway, guys, I hope you like this. This is relevant to our journey with World at War. I know this will go up without restriction, so this is gonna go right onto YouTube. Anyway, I'll link the reaction video of the song right here for Sabaton. That's gonna be over on Areas in the Nation. Guys, if you came here from Areas in the Nation, welcome. This is Rec Nation. This is our other community. We check out history and war documentaries and war things. We look into the war machine a little more. Anyway, guys, much love. Thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for rocking with the channel. Make sure you unplug, do something legendary. Don't forget to go to Rumble. It's free to check out our documentary, our World at War documentary. Anyway, guys, much love. I'll see you in the next video. Later, guys.